Hey guys, what's going on? It's Gunnar here. Welcome back to the channel. It's a beautiful May morning here on the land. You know, you can hear the birds chirping, the songbirds talking, some gobbling going on with the turkeys. But it's just a gorgeous morning out here. And I'm doing some work on the land. I'm planting some Norway spruce for screening cover right now. You know, and this is the perfect time to go ahead and get those trees in the ground because we've had a couple rains over the last few weeks and the ground's nice and moist. There's good moisture in the soil. So it gives those trees a jolt of water right off the bat and get them started on the right foot. So I'm gonna kind of walk through how I plant these Norway spruce here and how I'm gonna get them to grow successfully. So I don't have to continue to replant these trees year after year because they're just not taking. Now, I've got a couple tips that I use for managing drought situations. Now, last year I did end up losing a couple trees just because it was such a severe drought. And sometimes there's not a lot that you can do about that, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I set up this process, how I do it. You can see I've got my seedling right here. I've got my acrylic gel right here that I use for maintaining moisture in those root systems. They send it with the trees when they do come from the nursery. I get my trees from Chief River Nursery. I've had good luck with them. They're good quality trees. I've got 30 Norway spruce here. I stuck a couple in last night, about 12, and I'm continuing to use those up here this morning. But on the flip side of things, I've got all of this planned out. All of this was pre-planned. I knew where these trees were going when I ordered them. Guys, Gunnar, look. A lot of you guys have been talking to me, telling me how you need help. Well, I want to talk to you today about Whitetail coaching. One-on-one virtual coaching with me. We'll go in-depth on whatever problems, whatever help you need. We'll find the solution you're looking for. Shoot me a text, 608-632-7233. 608-632-7233. I got your back for life. Now let's get back to the video. It all lays in perfectly with the strategic whitetail strategy plan that I have set in place. Now, I've got a multi-year plan for this area. I've got switchgrass, half acre of switchgrass just behind the camera here on a fallow field that sat empty, just cooled season grasses, not a lot of value for wildlife. So I ended up tilling that in, planting switchgrass. It's starting to come up really nice. I might go in and do some burn control next spring to try to eliminate some of those weeds and then really spark a regeneration from that switchgrass and really blow it up. But this is a line, here's a fence line that I wanted to add some screening cover just to separate this area and create different lines of movement. Anytime you have edge habitat, you're creating a line of movement. Down here where I have my fruit trees, they've already created a trail that goes right along those trees. It's actually pretty neat to see. You can see it coming right up out of the good bedding slopes down here in this valley. And they're following that soon-to-be tree line right up here into this now switchgrass area. I've got a beautiful apple tree here just in this corner. There's gonna be a stand location right in there, potentially a box blind. This is a perfect side hill that we're gonna get screened off here, and I can't wait to show you guys how I do it. So first and foremost, when I start out digging my hole here, what I wanna do is I wanna scrape the sod off the top. You know, I've got a lot of warm season grasses coming here, just a lot of weeds, native weeds, that I'm just gonna go ahead and scrape off the topsoil. I want bare soil so I can continue to dig my hole down and I don't have to compete with those roots. Now, when I go ahead and put it back, I want real nice loose soil. I don't want clumps of grasses and all sorts of root systems when I go ahead and backfill my tree in here. So that's kind of the reason that I go ahead and I just scrape that top off. And I don't make my hole any bigger than the tree itself needs. Now, as you can see, these seedlings, the root system isn't necessarily that big. So I don't need to go super wide or deep with this hole. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys when I get my hole dug, how I go about placing that tree into the hole. But let's get this hole dug first and we'll get right to that. So now that I've got the area cleared, I've got a nice pad open from roots or weeds or any competition around it, it's time to start digging. Now I'll take a look at my root system, how big it is, how wide it is, and I'll basically dig my hole judging off that. But I like to go a little bit bigger just so I can have more loose dirt to surround that tree root system so it's not hard and it's not difficult for those young roots to get established in and around that hole. So now when I'm looking at digging this hole here, I'm gonna take a look at the root system and see how wide and how deep I actually need it. Now, when I pick up this seedling here, I can see the roots stick out roughly 7 inches, and they're hanging about 1.5 feet. Now, with this tree specifically, I'm probably gonna go about 1 foot by 1 foot, just because I don't necessarily need to go that deep so they're all the way hanging down. I can ball them up a little bit, but I don't need to get super wide and super deep to contain that root system. I just wanna be a little bit bigger than that root system so it has loose soil around it so it can get established and then start tapping out from there. Now, another thing I like to do when I'm going ahead and I'm digging my hole is I've got an old car mat here that I throw all my soil onto. That way I'm not losing a lot of loose soil into the grasses around the hole. And I can go ahead and I can chop up the clumps on that nice surface there so I don't lose any of that soil. I can chop up my clumps and I can get it right back in the hole where it belongs. So that's one of the tips that I like to use is an old car mat. You can use whatever. You can use a plastic bag, whatever you need. But I like that firmer surface with that old car mat. Seems to work really nice for me. So we're gonna go ahead and start digging here. Now, when I'm digging, I like to just make a nice circle or a square, just one by one, loosen up that soil, get my shape. Hopefully don't run into rocks. And you can see there, the soil's already starting to break up nice for me. I got half my size hole right there, and I got the other half there. Now, there's some clumps still, so I'm gonna go ahead and chop this up. I don't have near as much grasses and roots in there because I scraped off that top. Just gonna make it that much more easy when I go ahead and backfill. And as you get deeper, it should get looser. It should fall apart a lot easier, because you don't have all those roots so deep. Now around here, I don't have a lot of tree competition along this fence line, so I'm not gonna have a lot of big roots. But if you got areas with big roots, I recommend getting a battery powered sawzall and using that to cut those roots as need be if you're trying to get new plants established. It can be a little bit of a chore because it takes quite a while to cut some of those roots, because some of them can be pretty big in diameter, but that sawzall can make it a lot easier for you. All right, so we're basically at my 1 by 1 dimensions for my hole size right now. And I'm gonna bring the camera over here and show you guys this. But you'll be able to see here, it's got a really nice dark chocolate color to it. It's good soil. It hasn't ever been farmed. If anything, it's had some hay and some cattle in here, which is actually beneficial for the soil. But it's never been crop farmed. This is good soil. It's always had something growing on it, so it's always protected from the sun, the UV rays. It's always got active root systems in it, retaining moisture really well. You can see there's worms in here, and just an overall pretty healthy soil here in this area. So these trees should take off pretty well. So now that we've got the hole dug, it's time to plant the seedling. Now, our first step when it comes to planting this Norway spruce here is gonna be to dip it in that acrylic polymer that Chief River sends with. It's gonna help retain moisture within that root system and slowly release moisture as those roots need it. Now, it helps it stay moist in the bag as they are shipped to you as well, but on the directions, they'll say, give it a quick dip. Make sure you get those roots soaked nice and good. And then briefly let it drip off. You can see that gel is sticking to that root system here really nicely. And now what I do is I like to lay this tree off to the side here. And I like to find my root line and figure out where that tree needs to be at the correct height. Now I'm gonna bring my mat a little closer. So I got this dirt right here, and all these clumps, you can see I'm breaking these up. I don't want any big hard clumps in and around that root system, make it harder for that tree to grow than it has to be. I wanna break all these up. So I got nice loose soil around that tree. So it's got all the room in the world to breathe. And what I'll do is I'll lay this tree off to the side here. Doesn't want to stay real bad right there. Let's see if I can get it up here. I'll lay that tree just like that. Spread those roots out, and I'm just gonna kind of grate this soil in and around that root system. Breaking these clumps up, keeping that tree right at the correct height so we don't get it too deep. Making sure I've got soil around all the roots. I like to lean it back to get behind that tree, nice and around it. I'm not gonna compact this too hard. I'm just gonna let nature do its thing and settle that dirt the way it knows how to best, with some nice rainfall. As you can see, this tree's just about wanting to stand up straight here because I've got dirt, nice loose topsoil all the way around it supporting that tree. Now these Norway spruce shouldn't get hit too hard by the deer, so I'm not gonna throw a cage around it. Just gonna let, like I said, nature do its thing. Just shaking this dirt loose around this nice seedling here, giving it a lot of space for those roots to breathe, start spreading out and getting established. You can see this dirt's really nice here. Nice chocolate dirt here. There's some clay in here, but I'm trying to use the best stuff that I've got on this mat. Probably not going to use all of it, but pretty close. Now the key is to take your time with this and really get these trees in nice, because you're gonna have a much better success rate when it comes to these trees taking off and growing good for you. And there you can see we've got a nice firm base for that tree. And now, as you guys can see, we've got a nice Norway spruce here firmly in the ground. Got some beautiful topsoil around it. And then the reasoning for clearing that top thatch layer is just to give this tree some room. Now, as these grasses come up, in a drought situation, it can benefit you to have a good canopy around that tree so it's retaining moisture, but at the same time still getting a little bit of sun. But when there's not a lot of moisture, if you have that tree just out there baking in the sun, it's not gonna do well. It's probably gonna die on you. That's the case with a couple of these trees that I had die last year. Such a severe drought, just could not get the proper moisture that it needed. But some of them I actually attribute the survival rate to some of these warm season grasses coming up and shading those trees from that hot 90-degree sun throughout the summer when it was so dry. But this is a perfect situation. I'm gonna have conifer Norway spruce screening in here. And then I've got my switchgrass, half-acre patch of switchgrass here, adding that diversity. I've got some switch lines along here, fruit trees, established apple tree already. Got the farm and the house behind me. I'm trying to screen that off so these deer feel comfortable. Like I said, I've got a good trail that they're already starting to utilize right along the edge of those trees. It's like they already know what my plans are. They're doing it perfectly already. I've got a fence break right over here where an old gate used to be. They're already using that easiest path of resistance. I've got some nice shrubs coming, some gooseberry in here, some blackberry briars. This is gonna be a perfect spot for a tree stand or a box blind in that corner on an apple tree early October or all throughout the year. So I wanted to show you guys that. This is some of the plans that I'm bringing to fruition here. You know, I've got some more Norway spruce that I planted up along this line fence, screening off the neighboring property, making these deer feel secluded back on the food plots and the ag fields back here. So this is all part of the long-term plan here. We're adding little by little, year by year. This is not an overnight fix. This is year by year, adding a little at a time, making it manageable. And in the long term, at the end of the day, once that plan gets established and comes to fruition, it's going to be a heck of a property.